Central Israel was hit tonight, not the periphery, not the contested borders, the geographic and economic core of the nation. Iran launched a new barrage directly into the heartland, and multiple impacts have been confirmed inside Netanya and surrounding areas across central Israel. Official channels have gone quiet. Casualty figures are being withheld. Damage assessments are classified. This is not a routine escalation. This is the first time in this conflict that Iran has successfully concentrated sustained firepower on the population center that holds 70% of Israel's GDP. If you want to understand what just shifted in this war and why tonight changes the strategic calculus for every country in the Middle East, subscribe now and stay until the end, because what the data reveals will fundamentally alter how you understand this conflict. Central Israel is not just a geographic designation, it is the engine room of the entire nation. The strip of coastline running from Tel Aviv through Herzliya, Netanya, and up to Hadera contains Israel's financial district, its technology corridor, its primary international airport, its largest hospital complexes, and the densest concentration of civilian population anywhere in the country. Netanya alone sits on top of critical national infrastructure. The city's 220,000 residents live above fiber optic trunk lines that carry 40% of Israel's internet traffic. 3 major power substations feed electricity to the entire Sharon Plain. The coastal highway, Route 2, which connects Tel Aviv to Haifa, runs directly through it. When Iran targets central Israel, it is not making a political statement. It is putting a hand around the throat of the country's economic survival. Every hour of disruption to this corridor costs the Israeli economy an estimated $180 million in lost productivity, delayed logistics, and market instability. Tonight, that disruption lasted over 4 hours. At 10:23 p.m. local time, the first sirens sounded across the Sharon Plain. Within 90 seconds, alerts cascaded south into Tel Aviv, Ramat Gan, and Petah Tikva. More than 3 million people received simultaneous shelter notifications on their phones. The sky over Netanya lit up before most families reached their safe rooms. Residents who looked east saw the first interceptors climbing, white tails of smoke streaking upward against a dark sky. Then came the second layer. Orange flashes above the clouds as aero batteries engaged incoming ballistic threats at high altitude. Then a sound that has become the defining audio of this war, the deep concussive thuds of warheads reaching the ground. Not one, not two, impact after impact rolling across the city like delayed thunder. Car alarms triggered in chains across entire neighborhoods. Windows blew inward in at least 3 residential blocks. The ground shook hard enough that seismographic stations in Cyprus registered the impacts. Families in shelters held their children and listened to their city absorb what the defense system could not stop. To understand what happened tonight, you need to understand a concept the military calls multi-axis convergence. It is the evolution of the saturation attack, and it is significantly harder to defend against. In a saturation attack, the objective is volume. You overwhelm the defender by throwing more projectiles than the system can handle at once. Iran has been doing this for weeks, but tonight was different. Tonight, Iran did not just increase the number of missiles, it increased the number of directions. Intelligence analysts tracking the inbound trajectories have identified at least 4 distinct launch origins firing simultaneously: ballistic missiles from western Iran, cruise missiles from Iraqi proxy positions, drone swarms launched from Yemen, and a 4th vector that Israeli officials have not publicly acknowledged, likely short-range ballistic missiles from southern Syria or Lebanon. Each vector arrives at a different speed, a different altitude, and a different angle. Each one requires a different defensive response. Iron Dome engages the low and slow threats. David's Sling handles the mid-altitude cruise missiles. Aero systems track and intercept the high-altitude ballistic threats. But when all 4 threat types arrive within the same 90-second window, the system does not just face a volume problem, it faces a processing problem. Radars must classify, prioritize, and assign interceptors to dozens of targets moving at different speeds across different altitudes, all in real time. The human operators managing these systems are making life and death calculations faster than the conscious mind can process. And tonight, the math overwhelmed the machine. This is no longer about firing more missiles than Israel can intercept. This is about forcing every layer of the defense to activate simultaneously, creating seams between the layers, exploiting the half-second gaps where one system hands off to another. Iran is not just trying to get through the shield anymore. Iran is trying to make the layers interfere with each other, and the confirmed ground impacts in central Israel tonight suggest it is working. Here is the number that should terrify every defense planner in the Western world right now. Since February 28th, Iran and its proxies have launched an estimated 4,200 combined projectiles at Israel. That includes ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, one-way attack drones, and guided rockets. In 30 days, that is 140 projectiles per day, every single day for a month. Israel's interceptor inventory is classified, but open-source estimates from defense analysts place the pre-war stockpile at approximately 1,200 to 1,500 Arrow and David's Sling interceptors combined. Each engagement burns 1 to 2 interceptors per incoming threat. At 140 inbound threats per day, even assuming a 50% engagement rate where half are deemed non-threatening or fall in open areas, Israel is expending between 70 and 140 interceptors daily. Run that number forward. At current rates, the entire pre-war interceptor stockpile would be exhausted within 10 to 20 days. We are on day 30. The only reason the system is still operational is emergency resupply from the United States. American cargo aircraft have been landing at Nevatim Air Base on an almost daily basis carrying interceptor components. The Pentagon confirmed last week that it has authorized the transfer of an additional $2.1 billion in emergency missile defense aid. But here is the problem nobody in Washington wants to say out loud. American interceptor production lines were not built for this rate of consumption. The Raytheon facility that produces PAC-3 interceptors operates at a maximum surge capacity of approximately 500 units per year. That is roughly 40 per month. Israel is burning through that number in less than a week. The cost asymmetry has now reached a point that defense economists are calling strategic inversion. Iran spends an estimated $40 to $60 million per month on its missile campaign. Israel and the United States are spending over $3 billion per month to defend against it. For every dollar Iran spends on offense, the defending side spends between $50 and $75 on defense. That ratio is not sustainable for a month. It is not sustainable for a quarter. And Iran knows it does not need to sustain it forever. It just needs to sustain it longer than Israel can. Tonight's strikes on central Israel sent a signal that traveled far beyond the Middle East. It reached Washington. It reached Beijing. It reached every NATO capital that operates American-made air defense systems. Here's why. The systems defending Israel tonight, Iron Dome, David's Sling, Arrow, represent the most advanced, most tested, most combat-proven air defense architecture on the planet. No other country has a more layered or more sophisticated missile shield. And tonight, that shield was penetrated by a coordinated multi-axis attack from a country that spends less on its entire military than the United States spends on military air conditioning. Every country currently relying on American air defense technology is now recalculating. Taiwan, which depends on PAC-3 batteries to deter a Chinese missile strike, is watching. South Korea, which relies on THAAD to counter North Korean ballistic threats, is watching. Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states, which are integrating Aegis Ashore and Patriot systems to deter Russian cruise missiles, are watching. If Iran can saturate Israel's defenses, what does that imply about China's missile capability against Taiwan? China possesses an estimated 2,000 medium-range ballistic missiles aimed at the Taiwan Strait. The entire American THAAD and Patriot inventory deployed in the Pacific could not absorb even the first wave. The global arms market is already responding. Since this conflict began, inquiries for Russian S-400 systems have increased by over 300% from Gulf and South Asian buyers. Not because the S-400 is superior, but because buyers are hedging. They are no longer confident that any single doctrine defense system can survive what Iran just demonstrated. The monopoly of Western air defense credibility took a direct hit tonight alongside the buildings in Netanya. Iran's campaign is also rewriting energy security calculations in real time. Brent crude closed at $120 per barrel today, up $14 in the last week alone. Global insurance premiums for tankers transiting the Strait of Hormuz have increased 400% since February. Two major shipping companies have already suspended Gulf routes entirely. Iran has not struck a single oil facility in this campaign. It has not needed to. The mere demonstration of sustained, penetrating missile capability has been enough to destabilize global energy markets. The threat alone is generating economic damage that no Iron Dome battery can intercept. Israel now confronts a strategic dilemma with no clean exit. The options have narrowed, and each one carries consequences that compound the problem. Option 1. escalate offensive operations against Iran's launch infrastructure. Israel has been conducting strikes inside Iran for 30 days. It has hit declared missile storage facilities, fuel depots, and command nodes. Iranian launch activity has not decreased. It has increased. Iran's missile production is dispersed across more than 40 facilities, many of them underground, many of them in civilian industrial zones. Destroying them all would require a sustained air campaign of a scale Israel cannot execute without direct American combat participation. Washington has so far refused to cross that line. Option 2. Request a formal American military intervention. The political cost is enormous. An American war with Iran would trigger Hezbollah's full arsenal, activate proxy networks across Iraq and Syria, and risk direct confrontation with Russian military advisors embedded in Syrian air defense networks. The Pentagon's own wargaming for an Iran conflict estimates a minimum 18-month campaign with a cost exceeding $1.5 trillion. No American president will authorize that in an election cycle. Option 3. Accept the new reality, absorb the strikes, invest in civil defense, rapid infrastructure repair, and population resilience. Shift from a strategy of interception to a strategy of managed damage. This is what London did during the Blitz. It is what Ukraine has done for 3 years. It works, but it requires a psychological transformation that Israeli society has not yet undergone. For 75 years, Israel's security doctrine has been built on the promise that the military would keep the war away from home. That promise was broken tonight over Netanya. Rebuilding public trust after that kind of fracture takes a generation. Option 4. Negotiate. This is the option nobody in Jerusalem or Washington is willing to name publicly. But behind closed doors, back-channel communications through Oman and Qatar have intensified significantly in the last 10 days. The terms being discussed are not favorable to Israel. Iran is negotiating from a position of demonstrated capability, and it knows the interceptor math as well as anyone. Every option costs more than the last. Every day of delay makes the next option more expensive, and the missiles keep coming. Israeli authorities have confirmed that multiple impacts occurred across central Israel tonight. They have confirmed that emergency services responded to sites in Netanya and at least 2 other locations they have not named. They have not released the number of casualties. They have not released the locations of the impact sites. They have not released any imagery of the damage. In previous weeks, when missiles struck open ground or caused minimal damage, the IDF spokesperson released statements within 30 minutes, sometimes with photographs, sometimes with drone footage of craters and empty fields. The message was clear. Iran fired, we intercepted most of it, and what got through hit nothing of importance. Tonight, 4 hours after the attack, the only official statement is a single line confirming that emergency services are active. No damage details, no casualty figures, no impact locations, no reassuring photographs of empty craters. When a government that controls one of the most sophisticated media operations in the world goes silent after a major attack on its heartland, that silence is not a gap. It is a wall. And what it is hiding is the one thing no government can afford to show its people during a war. Evidence that the shield they were promised is failing. Tonight was not the largest attack of this war. It was not the first time missiles reached Israeli soil. But it was the night the conflict crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. For the first time, Iran demonstrated the ability to coordinate a multi-axis, multi-domain strike that penetrated the most advanced air defense network on Earth and delivered confirmed impacts into the economic and demographic core of Israel, not the periphery, not the desert, not the contested north, the center. This is proof that saturation has evolved. Volume alone was the old problem. Multi-axis convergence is the new one. It is harder to model, harder to defend, and harder to solve with technology alone. It requires either a fundamental redesign of missile defense architecture, a project that would take 5 to 10 years, or the destruction of Iran's launch capability at the source, a mission no one has been able to accomplish in 30 days of trying. The math has not changed, it has hardened. Iran produces faster than Israel can intercept. Iran spends less than Israel can defend. Iran launches from more directions than Israel can cover simultaneously. And with each passing week, the interceptor stockpile shrinks, the budget bleeds, and the psychological damage accumulates in ways no spreadsheet can capture. Multiple confirmed impacts in Netanya, multiple confirmed impacts across central Israel. The defense system is still fighting. The operators are still performing at extraordinary levels. But the ceiling is real. It was real last week. It was real last night. And tonight, Iran did not just reach it again. It pushed through it from 4 directions at once. The question is no longer whether Iran can penetrate Israel's defenses. That question was answered weeks ago. The question now is whether any defense system on Earth, built by any nation, funded at any level, can withstand a sustained multi-axis campaign from an adversary that produces threats faster, cheaper, and from more directions than the defender can physically cover. Tonight, central Israel became the test case for that question, and the early results are on the ground in Netanya. If this gave you clarity that the headlines did not, share it with someone who needs to understand the real dynamics of what is unfolding. Subscribe if you want to stay ahead of this conflict with analysis you will not find in mainstream coverage, and drop one word in the comments. Shield if you believe Israel's defense network can adapt and hold, or breach if you believe tonight proved that the architecture has been fundamentally compromised. Let the comments show where this audience stands.